Welcome everybody to Tuesday Tea Time. I'm out here in the pasture today with my boys. We've got Atlas in the front, and next to him, the dark one at the back, is Ari. And then we've got Ocasio closest to me. So I just got home from a 4-week work trip, and dang, it's good to be home. But the best part, the very best part about being home is the fact that for the first time, all of my boys are living together full time. And this is really exciting. So for those of you guys who don't know, Atlas, who's there in the front, he is a horse that I've had for quite a few years as a stallion. And he just was gelded about 7 weeks ago. And I didn't take that decision lightly. I really thought about it. My goal was hopefully to get him gentle enough that I could walk him into a proper surgery and have the gelding surgery done at a hospital. But this winter we had a couple of really scary incidences where he got pretty violent, not with me, but towards the other horses. And, you know, Atlas is a big boy there, my big blonde giant. And I decided that I probably couldn't wait until he was that gentle. And talking to a couple of vets, they said really the best thing to do is do a field surgery. So we did that about 7 weeks ago. Atlas was gelded, and he came through it beautifully. The gelding went very, very smoothly. He's healed up really well. But then the very best part about it is that he and Ari, the stallion behind him, can live together now. There's no fighting. They're best friends. They get along really well. They go everywhere together. And it was kind of amazing to me how quickly that turned around once Atlas wasn't a stallion anymore. When I got my 2 stallions, I really hoped they could live together and be friends, and I had all of these high hopes. But unfortunately, Atlas, my big Palomino there, he had come from a pretty traumatic background, and he had a tendency to hide all of his feelings, get very shut down and unresponsive, and then explode unexpectedly. And so he would end up in huge fights with the other stallion where none of them felt like they could back down. And, you know, I've worked at it for a couple of years, and what I found is that they could live together when I was with them. But the moment I was out of sight, Ari would do something that bugged Atlas. He would shut down, and then he would explode, and then somebody would get pretty hurt. So I really, really tried hard to give them time, just because I wanted to do the gelding surgery really properly at a hospital for Atlas. That's not the way it worked out. It worked out that it was far, far better to do the gelding surgery in the pasture. And he did great. He came through the surgery beautifully. And now all my boy horses live together. And there hasn't been one instance of problem. So today for tea time, I wanted to talk a little bit about hormones in horses. It's spring here, so I'm sure people are dealing that with as the mares start cycling here in the northern, and as the stallions start sort of smelling all the smells that are on the air, and even some of the geldings, people start talking about how difficult it is to work with horses when their hormones get going. And the thing that I think we don't talk about very much is the good side of that. We only really notice that hormonal impact when it's too much, too dramatic. And that is a problem, because what hormones do is they intensify all the feelings. So that's the good feelings and the bad feelings. But when the feelings get really intensified, what happens with horses is they stop looking out for each other, and they start only looking out for themselves. And that can be really problematic when it comes to herd integration. It can become really problematic when we want to do training or go out and do things with our horses. If they're very hormonal, everything is going to be much more And so much more dramatic can be great. It can be wonderful. It can make you feel alive and rich and healthy. And I think that that's a beautiful thing. But when it comes to training horses, a lot of times we struggle with trying to convince horses to think about humans as they would their closest friends in a herd, or even to think about their herd mates as somebody they love, not somebody they hate. So I really am of the belief that gelding horses is really, really beneficial for a lot of the boys. It just lowers the intensity of all the things they feel. And once you can lower that intensity, they're more likely to think of collaborative solutions to things instead of self-defensive solutions. And that's really what we run into when the hormones get really strong, is the horses just start thinking about themselves, how to fill their own needs without really thinking too much about anybody else's needs. And that's obviously going to be a problem for us when we're training horses. Now, Ari, let's see, he is right behind me here. Ari's still a stallion. I got him from Nevada. He was 8 years old when I got him. And I think he was a herd sire. He was pretty dominant in the corrals when I saw him. Nobody got in his way. And he's lovely. He's very sensible. He is very much a stallion. I don't have any mares here on the property. So there are, however, mares across the valley. So way over there, we have a breeding farm where there's lots of mares. So these guys still, there's all the smells on the air. There is going to be that springtime feeling where hormones make all the emotions feel more intense. The question is, can we train through that? Can we find ways to work with our horses so that they can feel what they feel? They can feel rich and alive and all of those things, but they can also remember that other people and other horses are also important, because that's what you run into. When they feel overwhelmed, they forget anyone else's needs are important. Now, in freedom-based training, I really focus on building emotional stability in the horses. And I do that through helping them change focus with the idea that everything a horse focuses on either raises stress or lowers stress. And if they get hyper fixated on a source of stress-raising ideas, that's really going to make them feel overwhelmed to the point where they don't want to work with anybody else. If they can learn to change their focus, think about something that is more comforting instead of more concerning, they become more community oriented. They want to work with others, find solutions with others, and be part of a group. So, that's really what I study. I was really working, I had these two stallions, and I was really trying to work with what does that look like with the added hormones that stallions have. I'm still in that project with Ari, who's back there. Ari's taking a nap. As you see, he's a pretty chill dude. And I'm still working with him as a stallion to see how much we can foster and develop his ability to work well with others. Atlas, however, my big Palomino that I move a little bit so you can see, he is 7 weeks after being gelded, and he's doing great. Lowering the intensity of his hormones was the best thing I could have ever done for him. He's healthier than he's ever been in so many ways. He's emotionally more stable. He has more friends. He can live with my stallion Ari, and there's no problems. These are all huge benefits for him. And, I could have kept him a stallion to try and prove a point. But the fact is, if I had tried to keep him a stallion to prove a point, I wouldn't be able to have him out here in these beautiful pastures, which just seemed honestly selfish to me. So I'm really, really, really glad that I set Atlas up to have a surgery. I'm really glad he got through it so well. And I'm really glad that he lives with his good friends now. So, obviously not everybody has that solution. For mares that, cycle and they have a lot of intensity with their hormones, it's a little bit more difficult. The decision to have a hysterectomy for a mare, that's kind of a bigger surgery. And I know that people are really careful about how they, think about that. And I'm not saying it's going to fix everything. All it's going to do is lower the intensity. When we lower the intensity, we have to remember we lower the intensity of the good as well as the bad. And so, I would love to keep Ari a stallion. I don't know that I will. The fact is we live in the domestic society where, I'd love to have a bigger group of horses. I don't know that I want to own a lot of horses, but I would love it if somebody wanted to bring their geldings to live with me. And not a lot of people want to put their geldings in with a stallion because it feels dangerous, no matter how nice he is. So at some point, if it seems like Ari would have a lot more friends as a gelding, I might actually walk him into a hospital and get him that surgery so that he can have the best quality of life possible. So I see that Laurence has a comment. She says, absolutely right. This is why I decided to make the ovarectomy to Miss, my mare. And after 4 years of discussions with her, now she's so fine and it's a relief to both of us. Yeah. So for some horses, the intensity of their hormones makes life so overwhelming, they can't think of anybody else's needs but their own. And, there's lots of training and developmental things we can do, but sometimes the simplicity of an operation like I did for Atlas just is so quick. And I do think that I needed to wait as long as I did because I got him as a very dangerous stallion. And I was really, really concerned he would hurt somebody in the process of getting him gelded. I think the time that I took to get to that process really meant that it was entirely safe and nobody did get hurt. And I'm glad that I took that time anyway. I think I missed a comment up here. Yes, Regina says, of course, it allows them to live in a domesticated herd without too much drama. So so sad to see stallions isolated on farms, unable to spar, run, groom, and find their pair bond within their own herd. Yeah. And, that's the thing that, we don't always want to think about is the fact that stallions out in the wild, they do have a good life, but some of them are pretty banged up. Some of them are just covered with injuries. And, those were situations where the hormones ran so strong that what may have started out as a bit of a spar and a game turned into an out-and-out battle. And that out-and-out battle is where they can no longer think of the needs of anybody else. They can only think of their own needs. And that's where they're going to fight to the death. Or they're going to fight until one of them is so injured they can't fight any longer. And in the domestic world, we don't have a whole lot of tolerance for that. So it's a good thing that we have some solutions for dealing with hormones. I would love to think that I can always work through a training system, through a psychological development program that helps them get the full benefit of their hormones, both the good and managing the bad. Like, that seems like a rich, full life. But we live in the real world. And I wanted to take a moment to talk about how living in the real world, the quality of life is important. And we're always going to weigh the pros and the cons about intensity, which feels good until it's too much intensity, and then it feels bad. And when we can acknowledge that and weigh the pros and the cons, and we can decide how much intensity is really benefiting this horse's life and how much intensity is just making them feel overwhelmed and stressed all the time. So as you see, Ari back there having a little nap, not real stressed. He has good friends. He's here with Ocasio and Atlas, and they're all buddies. They really have a good time together. And I couldn't be more thrilled. This is like the best thing that could happen, while I'm home, is that I can get all of them happily living together in a way that feels secure and bonded and healthy. And then when I leave on my next trip, I really feel like I'm leaving them with family. Nobody's alone, nobody's lonely, nobody's overwhelmed. They all have good partners they can bounce off of. So those are my thoughts for today. For any of you guys who are interested, at 1 o'clock, which is I think in about 45 minutes, I'm going to be doing a freedom-based learning salon for all of my Patreon members. And so if you're interested, go to Patreon/tamingwild. And today we're going to be talking about how to make the bridge between the work that I do with freedom-based training and the work that you might do with a halter on that is a little bit more direct line training. And so we're going to talk about that, and it's an interactive conversation with the members, so people will ask questions and tell stories, and we'll just talk about that subject from as many angles as we can. So you'd be welcome to join if you are interested. Yay, Sandra's going to be there. That's great. And for now, I'm just going to hang out with my boys for a little bit longer and just revel in their peace and their beauty. And thank you guys for joining me for tea time. Doesn't Atlas look great? He's still got a ways to go. There's still things that concern him. He's not by any means 100% the horse he might have been without all abuse. It's going to take some time still, but I do think without the added stallion hormones, we're going to make progress in building trust so much faster, because I won't always be up against that edge of him feeling overwhelmed all the time. So hopefully that's some good food for thought for everyone. And the one last thing I would say about hormones is just remember that they are only one factor in a huge amount of stressors that are in the environment. And so that means that if you do have a really hormonal mare or a stallion or a gelding, and they just feel overwhelmed and stressed all the time, you may not be able to fix that piece. But remember, you can fix the other pieces. For example, I think if I had only gotten one stallion instead of two, Atlas really would have felt a lot safer. And if he'd felt a lot safer, he would have been able to handle the hormones of being a stallion better. But because I got two stallions instead of just one, and they never really knew where they stood with each other, even though they were on different sides of a fence, that was an environmental factor. It was just too much for him. And Ari handled it quite well. Atlas did not. Now, I wasn't ready to get rid of either one of them. I love them both. I want to keep them both. Something had to change. But if you have a mare or a gelding or a stallion and you can't change the hormone factor, think about the other stressors in their life. What could you change environmentally? What could you change for them that makes them able to handle the surges of hormones in a way that makes their life feel rich and good and beautiful instead of overwhelming? So I hope that's good food for thought. And that's hello from Ocasio and Atlas and Ari, who is still, let's see, napping back there. He's behind Ocasio's head. Let's see. There he is. My little peaceful sleeping stallion. All right, you guys have a wonderful day wherever you are. I'll see some of you in the learning the freedom-based learning salon, which is going to happen at 1 o'clock. And I will be back next Tuesday with more ideas.